All right, let's dive into the story of Drakeo the Ruler. If you're listening to this, you're probably already interested in his music, and you want to dig a little deeper. We're going to take a look at Drakeo's life and career, and of course, we'll also be looking into his tragic death in 2021. To do this, we're going to be using a few different sources. We have biographical information, court documents from his various legal troubles, and a long-form investigative article about Drakeo's murder. We're going to try to piece together a full picture of his life and death, and hopefully get a sense of what it all means.
Yeah. It's a really fascinating story, and Drakeo was a singular figure in the world of LA rap. I mean, the LA Times called him the most original West Coast stylist in decades.
Wow, that's high praise coming from the LA Times. I've heard a lot about his lingo bingo style, but I don't really get what that means. What exactly is lingo bingo?
Hmm. It's kind of tough to describe. It's like, imagine someone took a bunch of antique slang words and mashed them together with these really sharp and diabolical taunts. Draco would throw in these literary references and deliver it all with a kind of a whimsical, almost absurdist flair.
Okay, so it sounds like it's more than just rapping. It's like he's inventing his own language.
Exactly. And it was incredibly influential. Other rappers in LA started copying his style. He was really a trendsetter.
Cool. So going back to the beginning, Drakeo was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. Is that right?
That's right. He was raised by a single mom.
What was his early life like?
It was rough, man. He dealt with a lot of hardship growing up. There are even reports that he got shot when he was only 15.
Oh, wow. That's so young. Did that experience affect his music?
You know, it's always hard to say for sure, but you can definitely hear the echoes of those experiences in his lyrics. Music was like an escape for Draco,
Yeah. It seems like it would be.
a way to process his pain and frustration. He started rapping when he was pretty young. And then, in 2015, his song Mr. Get Dough got the attention of DJ Mustard.
Oh, yeah. DJ Mustard is huge in the LA music scene.
Absolutely. And that collaboration was huge for Drake's career. DJ Mustard remixed Mr. Get Dough, and it just blew up online.
So that was his big break.
It really was. It put Draco on the map, and later that year, he released his mixtape, I Am Mr. Mosley.
And that cemented his place in the LA rap scene.
Exactly. But unfortunately, that's also when the legal trouble started.
It seems like Draco couldn't catch a break.
Yeah, you're right about that. And it's worth mentioning that Draco's legal problems weren't just about alleged criminal activity. The way his lyrics were used against him in court raises serious questions about freedom of expression.
Okay, I definitely want to get into that.
Yeah.
But can you first give me an example of how they used his lyrics against him?
Sure, so there's this one line from his song Flexin'. Draco raps, I'm riding around town with a Tommy gun. And the prosecutors pointed to that line as evidence of criminal intent, especially when combined with his alleged gang affiliation.
Wow, so they're basically saying his art is a confession.
That's right. And this tactic has been used against tons of rappers, particularly those from marginalized communities.
I mean, I could see how that would have a chilling effect on artistic expression. It's like they're saying you can't rap about certain things without it being used against you.
Exactly. And for Draco, it led to a long and difficult legal battle. He faced charges for gun possession and even murder.
It's almost like they were determined to put him away.
Yeah, it really seemed that way. He always maintained his innocence. And in 2019, he was actually acquitted of the most serious charges.
So that must have been a huge relief.
It was. But the story doesn't end there. The district attorney decided to refile some of the charges. So even though he was acquitted of murder, he was still stuck in the system.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. It must have felt like he couldn't escape.
It did. But even while he was in jail, Draco never stopped creating music.
Really?
Yeah, he recorded an entire mixtape using a prison phone. It's called Thank You for Using GTL.
Wait, so he recorded a whole mixtape while he was in jail?
He did.
That's amazing. I bet it's a powerful listen.
It is. It's raw and emotional. It gives you a real sense of what he was going through at the time.
I can only imagine.
Draco wasn't just making music, he was surviving.
Wow. I'm glad he eventually caught a break.
Me too. He ended up taking a plea deal in 2020 and was released.
Finally. So tell me about his comeback. What led him to that fateful Once Upon a Time in LA music festival?
Well, his release was a huge moment. Draco was finally free to get back to what he loved. He dropped his debut studio album, The Truth Hurts.
I've heard that album. It's great.
Yeah, it really is. He had some big features on it too, like Drake.
That's awesome.
It felt like Draco was finally getting the recognition he deserved, and the Once Upon a Time in LA festival was supposed to be his victory lap.
Yeah, it was his big return to the LA stage.
Exactly. But as we know, things didn't go as planned.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Before we get into that, though, can you tell me a little more about the festival itself? What was the vibe like? Who else was performing?
Oh, man. The lineup was insane. Snoop Dogg, YG, 50 Cent. It was the place to be.
Wow. So it's a big deal.
It was. But there was also this underlying tension, this kind of darkness that permeated the event.
That's interesting. What do you mean by darkness? Was there a specific threat?
Not that I know of, but our long-form article paints a pretty chilling picture of that night.
Yeah.
The author, who is actually a close friend of Draco's, talks about this feeling of unease backstage, like something was off.
So it was just a general sense of foreboding.
Yeah, something like that. And there was a real lack of security, like a lax atmosphere that felt really out of place, especially given Draco's history.
Right, and the rumors of a bounty on his head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The article describes the walk to Draco's Rolls-Royce as being eerily quiet. It was poorly lit, with almost no security in sight. That's just asking for trouble, especially considering his past. And, the nature of the event itself.
Yeah, with so many big names and so many people.
Exactly. And that lack of security ended up having tragic consequences.
Okay, so let's talk about what happened. Tell me about the attack.
So Draco and his crew were walking towards the stage, and this group of masked men just rushed them.
What? That's terrifying.
It was. The article describes it as this chaotic scene.
Yeah.
People were scrambling for safety. And what's really shocking is that there was no real security presence to intervene.
What? Are you serious? At a major music festival, there were no security guards nearby.
That's what the article said.
That's unbelievable. And what about the police?
The article says they were nowhere to be found during the attack.
Wow. That's a complete security failure. It makes you wonder if things could have been different if they'd had adequate security.
It really does.
So what happened to Drakeo during the attack?
Well, for a second, it seemed like the fight was over, the attackers scattered, and Drakeo and his crew continued walking towards the stage. There was this brief moment of calm, and then one of the attackers, still wearing his mask, jumped up on this ledge, and he started beating his chest like he was celebrating a victory. And then, and this is a really creepy detail, all of the attackers took off their hoodies. Like they weren't afraid of being identified anymore.
Oh, wow. That's chilling.
It is. It's like they knew they could get away with it.
Yeah, like they had nothing to fear.
And then just as quickly as it started, they were gone.
Wow. So what happened to Drakeo?
That's when they found him.
On the ground.
Yeah, bleeding from a stab wound to the neck.
Oh, my God.
The article describes people frantically trying to save him.
Yeah.
Medics performing CPR.
That's so sad.
While everyone around them is still partying.
It's a crazy contrast.
It is. The festival was eventually shut down.
Yeah.
But it was too late for Drakeo.
So what happened next?
Well, the author of the article talks about waiting outside the hospital. They were getting all these conflicting reports.
Yeah.
And then finally the confirmation came. Drakeo was dead.
It's just heartbreaking.
It is.
It feels like this story was just getting started.
It does. And it raises so many questions.
Yeah. Like who was responsible for keeping him safe? And why did the system fail him so badly?
Exactly. And then there's the larger issue of violence in our communities.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
So what happened after his death? Were there any legal repercussions?
Well, Drakeo's mother filed a lawsuit against Live Nation.
Live Nation?
Yeah, the company that put on the festival.
Oh, right.
She sued them for negligence and inadequate security.
Okay. For those who don't know, Live Nation is a huge entertainment company. They own Ticketmaster. They put on tons of concerts and festivals.
Yeah, they do.
So they have a lot of responsibility when it comes to safety and security.
Absolutely. And the lawsuit alleges that they failed to meet those responsibilities in Drakeo's case.
What's the status of the lawsuit?
A judge recently ruled that it can move forward.
So we'll have to see what happens with that.
We will.
What about the attackers? Were they ever identified?
That's where things get a little murky. There were all sorts of accusations and rumors flying around online.
Yeah, I remember that.
Some people were pointing fingers at YG and his entourage.
Really?
Oh.
Is there any evidence to support that?
Well, the long-form article mentions some eyewitness accounts.
Okay.
Apparently, YG's entourage arrived in a large caravan, and there was some tension surrounding their presence at the festival.
Mm-hmm. But is that enough to connect them to the attack?
You know, it's important to be cautious with information online.
Of course.
There's no concrete evidence linking YG to the attack.
So it's basically a he said, she said situation.
Unfortunately, yes.
And that kind of speculation just muddies the waters.
It does, and it distracts from the real tragedy here.
Yeah. The loss of a brilliant artist
Exactly.
and the pain that his family and friends are going through.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that. So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into Drakeo's life and legacy, let's shift our focus to the aftermath of his death and the lasting impact he's had on the music world.
Okay. Yeah, it was tough for everyone who knew him. It really felt like the world lost something special.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine what his family went through, especially his mom.
It's got to be just devastating. And, it's not just about grieving the loss of a son. It's about the way he was taken, the violence, the injustice of it all.
Right. He was only 28 years old. Feels like he had so much more to give.
He did, and it's not like he didn't try to escape that life. He famously said, "Gangbanging is for losers."
Yeah, I've heard that quote. What do you think he meant by that?
You know, it's tough to say for sure, but I think it speaks to the complexities of the environment he came from, a place where violence is often seen as the only way out, even when you recognize how destructive it is.
Yeah, it's like he understood the futility of it all.
Yeah.
But he was still caught in the crossfire.
Exactly.
And I think you can hear that tension in his music.
Oh, absolutely.
It's dark, often violent. But there's also this incredible wit and humor, this awareness of the absurdity of it all.
Yeah, he wasn't glorifying violence. He was bearing witness to it.
Using his art as a form of social commentary.
Exactly.
And challenging listeners to confront the realities of street life.
And the systemic issues that perpetuate it.
So, getting back to the memorial at his home.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
The article ends with this really poignant description of the memorial.
Oh, yeah.
There was a cardboard cutout of Drago.
A cardboard cutout.
Yeah, it was standing next to the Christmas tree.
Wow.
And all around it were his belongings.
Like what?
Designer clothes.
Okay.
Unreleased music.
Oh, wow.
And, from where they were, you could see the whole city.
L.A.
Yeah, the city he loved, but also the city that, in a lot of ways, never really embraced him.
That's a powerful image.
It is.
It really drives home the suddenness of his loss.
And all of the dreams that were left unfulfilled.
It's a reminder that no matter how successful you become, you're never really immune to the harsh realities of the world.
That's true.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Drakeo's life and legacy, what do you think is the most important takeaway? What do you think you would want us to remember him by?
That's a good question. I think he'd want us to remember his resilience, his creativity, his dedication to his craft.
And his refusal to be silenced.
Exactly. He never let the hardships define him. And he used his voice to challenge the status quo.
To shine a light on injustice.
Absolutely.
And even though his life was tragically cut short,
Yeah.
his music continues to resonate.
It does. And it's a reminder that we can all make a difference, no matter where we come from.
Or what obstacles we face.
That's right.
So for anyone listening who wants to learn more about Drake A, where should they start?
Well, definitely start by listening to his music.
Yeah.
You'll hear his unique style, the lingo bingo, his raw and honest perspective on life in South Central.
Something else.
It is. And if you want to dive deeper into his story, I highly recommend checking out the long-form article we've been talking about.
It's a great piece of investigative journalism.
It really is.
Drakeo's story is a reminder that music can be more than just entertainment.
Yeah.
It can be a voice for the voiceless.
A chronicle of struggle and triumph.
A catalyst for change.
His voice may be silenced, but his music lives on.
Challenging us to listen, to learn, and to demand better for ourselves and our communities.
Well said.
Jaylee. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the life and legacy of Drakeo the Ruler. We hope this conversation has inspired you to explore his music, to learn more about the issues his story highlights, and to remember the importance of using your voice to speak truth to power. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. So how did the music world react to Drakeo's death?
I mean, it was huge. There was this outpouring of grief and tributes from other artists, fans, industry figures. Everyone from Snoop Dogg to Drake expressed their condolences. And a lot of them talked about Drakeo's impact on music and culture.
It's really a testament to his talent that so many people were touched by his music. The article we've been talking about ends with this really powerful description of a memorial that was held at Drakeo's home.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
It's a somber scene, like they had this cardboard cutout of
Like
Drake.
a cardboard cutout.
Yeah, next to the Christmas tree. And all around it were all his belongings.
What kind of belongings?
Designer clothes, unreleased music, And, from where they were, you could see the whole city.
L.A.
Yeah, the city that he loved, but also the city that, in a lot of ways, never really embraced him.
It's such a striking image.
It is.
It really highlights how sudden his loss was and all the things he could have accomplished
Yeah.
if he had been given more time.
It's a reminder that success doesn't erase vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Drakeo was always really open about the realities of his life. He famously said, "Gangbanging is for losers."
Right.
What do you think he meant by that?
It's tough to say for sure, but I think it speaks to the complexities of the environment he came from, where violence is often seen as a way of life, even when you recognize how destructive it is.
I think you can really hear that tension in his music.
Oh, yeah.
It's dark, often violent.
But there's also this incredible wit and humor.
Right, like he was aware of the absurdity of it all.
Exactly. He wasn't glorifying violence. He was bearing witness to it
Using his art as a form of social commentary.
and challenging his listeners
Yeah.
to confront the realities of street life.
And the systems that perpetuate those realities.
Exactly.
So what can we learn from Drakeo's story? What message do you think he would want to leave behind?
Well, I think he'd want us to remember his resilience,
Yeah.
his creativity, his dedication to his craft.
He never let the hardships define him.
Exactly.
And he used his platform to challenge the status quo, to shine a light on injustice.
And even though his life was cut tragically short, his music lives on.
It does. And it serves as a reminder of the systemic issues that contribute to violence and the failure to protect those who are most vulnerable.
His story is a call to action for all of us.
Absolutely. So for anyone listening who wants to learn more about Drakeo, where should they start?
Well, definitely start by listening to his music.
Yeah.
You'll hear that unique style, the lingo bingo, his raw, honest perspective on life.
It's powerful stuff.
It is. And if you want to dive even deeper into his story, I highly recommend reading that long-form article we've been discussing.
It's a fantastic piece of investigative journalism.
It really is.
Drakeo's story is a reminder that music can be so much more than just entertainment.
Absolutely.
It can be a voice for the voiceless, a chronicle of struggle and triumph.
And a catalyst for change.
Drakeo's voice may be silenced,
But his music lives on.
challenging us to listen, to learn,
Yeah.
and to demand better for ourselves and our communities. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the life and legacy of Drakeo the Ruler. We hope this conversation has given you a better understanding of his music and the complex issues surrounding his life and death. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.